This
essentials
conference will now be recorded.
leading into our national conference coming up in September. And we've covered a lot. Many of you have been with us for multiple sessions. And we talked about time management. We've talked about conflict resolution. We've talked about handling those difficult conversations. We've even talked about being, our personal growth and our role as a leader in development. And today, I want to end on a topic that's really fun for me. And so it's from 8-track to emoji is what we call it. And I'm actually going to use the sidebar here, the chat, to throw some questions in and throw some things in. The big topic is from 8-track to emoji. And this is some material that we've developed over the last couple of years. At Paradigm Shift, we work with groups on cross-generational leadership, working with boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. We define them as upcoming generations and established generations. And working with these groups can be difficult, but what we found in working with people and interviewing thousands of people, that there are some things that are really myths that are debunked. And so I'm going to start with some fun things. And you guys are a great group. You've already been active in the chat. We've been talking about the beach. I'm going to ask you a few things, and I'm going to throw some questions over in the chat, and I'd love for you to respond via chat. Because more important than really your age is your worldview. So the topic today is from 8-track to emoji, and we're going to do some highlights of this material. We're not going to cover it all, but it's about cross-generational leadership. Doesn't matter what generation you're in, you are a leader, influencing others, connecting with others. It doesn't matter what your role is. You may feel like, well, I have no authority. I am just, whoops, stop right there. Anytime you put a just in front of your description, you are justifying a lack of action. You're not just anything. You have power, you have authority, you have leadership, you have influence. Yes, you might not have the absolute authority, but you have influence. And so that's what Leadership Essentials is about, growing in those things. So with cross-generational leadership, we often define people in these roles. And so we know, just for quick definitions, now all this information, if you're curious, we just got out of a 4-part series on the Good Leader podcast. And so shameless plug here. But if you like this stuff, you can check out the Good Leader podcast, which is produced by Paradigm Shift, and we go in detail. We interviewed someone from every generation that works with us, works within our team. So it was really cool to define what it means to work with cross generations all within the same workspace, so that those variables were the same. So in other words, they all work with Paradigm Shift. They all have the same ecosystem, but the only difference is their age. So it was really interesting to hear what they viewed as good leadership, what they want in a workplace when they have the same current experience. It was really cool. So we interviewed one of our boomers, we interviewed one of our Gen Xers, we interviewed the millennial of all millennials, and we interviewed a few of our Gen Z interns. So it's really cool. It's a 4-part series. You can find it on that podcast. I'm going to give you the highlights here. So when we think about these generations, the first thing to realize is it's just as much art as science. So any article that you read, there's going to be an ish. I say ish. There's going to be an ish, ISH, on each end. So millennials, for example, are from 1981-ish to 1996-ish. And I start with those because often when we say the word millennial today, we use it often as a catch-all for anyone younger than me. Well, millennials, anyone younger than me is a millennial, and that's just not really true. And many people don't think of me as a millennial, but by most research, I am the oldest of the millennials. I was born in 1981. I turned 40 this year. I'm not really the avatar for most millennials. I'm on the oldest of the millennials. So then those born from 1996-ish to 2010-ish are Gen Z. So if we move backward from there, you've got about a 15 to 20-year span that you could call each generation. So those born from 1960, somewhere between 63-ish and 1980-ish, Gen X. And then, of course, coming out of World War II, 1946-ish to 1963-ish, baby boomers. So those are the scholarly years that we talk about when we're talking about who is in a different generation. If you'll notice, those years, once again, have an ish on each end. And if you look up a Gallup organization or you look up a predictive index, you look up some of these other researchers, they might have a slightly different year. That's why I say ish, but it's going to be close to that. Now, what's fascinating, though, is we use a term when we talk about this as generation identification. Because what's more important than the year that you were born is your worldview. So that's the first point that I'd like to make today. If you're going to lead cross-generationally, it doesn't really matter how old Janet is. It's her worldview. It's how she sees the world. Now, how old you are, your age often influences how you see the world. So that's a factor, but it's more about your generation identification, because if you grew up in a rural environment, you tend to lean older. If you grew up in a rural environment with less technology available to you, you tend to lean older in our experience. So in other words, I'm a millennial technically, but I have Gen X tendencies. I even have some boomer tendencies because I have a strong connection with my grandparents. I grew up rural. And the last thing, socioeconomically, I grew up fairly poor. So if you grew up in a rural area with a lower income, you tend to lean older because of a lack of technology and honestly, just a lack of consistent news. So you tend to lean older. Your communication is often older. So that being said, we have 3 questions that are really fun. We're going to dive into these first. So what I want to do is ask these 3 questions and talk about generation identification. And then I'm going to give you the 3 big highlights that we learned from interviewing our own team in generation leadership. What are people looking for? There are 3 things that regardless of their age, regardless of generation, every single person from every generation said one of these 3 things. It was really cool to see consistencies, thousands of differences, but 3 things, if you want to be a good leader, really resonated. So the first question that I'm going to ask you, though, what generation you're in, is what piece of technology is the first piece of technology that you remember wanting as a kid? So somewhere between the ages of 5 to 15, what's that piece of technology that you're like, I really want this? It could be a CD player, could be a record player, could be a Nintendo. Tim, Atari. Tim, you are playing the game, buddy. That's exactly what I want to hear. Throw it in there. Tal says a Discman. Denise says a Walkman. Yes, Judy says a record player. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, yes, yes. All right. What are these? Mine, I'm going to put in there. I remember really, really wanting I'm going to put mine in there. I really, really wanted a Game Boy, which my dad squarely said, no way. You don't need that. We already have a Nintendo. You don't need anything else. All right, so as you can see here, you can see these differences in technology. Now, what's fascinating, oh, Janet, a phone in your room? Ah, speaking my language. Now, my mom and dad, they used to have party lines. My mom and dad would not let me have a party line, but they did let us have a phone in the room. But you had your phone, but then you could tell when everybody picked up. So it was like, wait a minute. You saw your younger siblings. I'm the oldest. And it was like, Josh, get off the phone. Get off the phone. Or the worst is like, I've been on the phone too long, and my mom gets on and says, Jerrod, it's time to get off the phone. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, okay. That's a blast from the past. All right, so this is so much fun. Now, the second question is just as much fun. All right, so remember these technologies. Christine said the karaoke machine. What a great answer. Now, what's fascinating is if you use these questions, and I always encourage you, especially as HR professionals, feel free. Use these questions as icebreakers. Use these in some of your trainings. People love to talk about it. The reason that this generation stuff is so important and the reason that cross-generational leadership is valuable is because it's nostalgic. People have an emotional connection to this stuff. And even now, if you're like me, I'm starting to feel something. I go through memory lane and I'm like, wow, why is this powerful to me? It's because you're connecting to your childhood. You're connecting to things that matter to you. And I'll explain why that's important. If I miss it, Janet, I'm going to ask you to keep me on track. But I'm going to, as I go through these 3 questions, I'll share kind of what I believe is like the psychological trigger as why it really matters in leadership. So the second question. Now you notice, let me point this out. None of us on this call put iPhone. None of us on this put iPhone X. None of us on this call put these sorts of things. that's a huge, just think of the differences in worldview. That if it's like someone who says, I really wanted a record player which is playing the vinyl records that I own, versus someone who grows up saying, I want an iPhone that is an absolute window to the entire world. You see what I'm saying? Like that's a huge difference in the way that we view the world. So technology is the first piece, and technology probably matters more than all the others. What technology did you grow up with? This is why, if you grew up a little bit on the lower economic side, grew up on the rural side, you probably lean more older in your worldviews. Like me, I tend to lean more older because I did not have this technology. I did not. So number two, second question to ask, what pop culture icon represents your childhood? So it could be a singer, an actor, a group. What pop culture icon represents your childhood to you? What, and maybe you have more than one answer, but throw them in there. So I'm going to throw some of my answers in there. What pop culture icon, could be a movie star, could be a singer, could be someone else. I've got a couple here. The Monkees. What a great answer. What a great answer. Judy, our oldest daughter's first word was the word down, which is weird, but we used to sing every time we change her diaper or be silly with her. We would sing, hey, hey, we're the Monkees, and we'd just play around with her. People say we monkey around, and we were too busy singing to let anybody. And she said, down. That was her very first word, and she finished the Monkees theme song for us. All right. So I'm getting that. All right, so I get Duran. Tim, you were really aging yourself there, you Gen Xer. All right, so we got Michael Jackson, Duran, Michael Jackson, and Prince. New Kids on the Block. Stephanie, great answer. Great answer. Let's see, Lita Ford, Brady Bunch, Beatles, Lost in Space, Brady Bunch. Okay, these are great. Okay, so the third question. So we got technology, pop culture, and the third question is, what worldwide news event do you remember noticing for the first time? So probably be somewhere between the age of 5 to 15 again. What worldwide event do you remember noticing? Or for me, for example, it was Challenger. I remember when Challenger exploded, the spaceship Challenger. I remember seeing it on the news. I remember we talked about it. And the other one was when the Berlin Wall fell down. The Berlin Wall coming down. Those two events were the first ones that I remember as a kid experiencing, understanding. I knew something was going on. I might not understand everything about it, but I knew it was big. Judy, excellent answer. JFK funeral. Tal, Elvis passing away. Good answer. I think that was probably 77.
77, yeah.
77. Desert Storm, Stephanie, great answer with Desert Storm. I actually remember when we went from Desert Shield to Desert Storm. I was in 3rd grade, and I remember that being a big deal. Mount St. Helens erupting, great answer, Denise. Challenger, I echo the Challenger sentiment. Okay, so these responses matter because of your worldview. I was doing this workshop one time at a human resource conference live, and live we're doing this and we're having fun. We're talking about these in person, and I said the Berlin Wall was one of mine, and a gentleman raised his hand in the back, and I said, yes, sir. And he said, Jerrod, do you mean when it went up or when it went down? He said, because I remember both. And I was like, wow, great point for me coming down. I didn't see it go up. So these sorts of things matter. Now, the reason that it matters, and this is that psychological tilt, Janet, that I was talking about, Janet, and I'm not a psychologist. This is from a leadership perspective. But I think that these things that happen to us, or we experience, I should say, as we mature, especially as children, early adolescence, it shapes our worldview. It shapes the way we see the world. It shapes the way that we see others. And it's very hard for me to believe or esteem or trust someone who has no understanding of the events that I experience. So, for example, if I start talking about the Berlin Wall and someone younger than me says, wait, I don't know what the Berlin Wall is, that's legitimate. That's legit. We're not all historians. We don't all know everything that has ever happened. And even there are some of these that I'm more familiar with or less familiar with. Like Tim is talking about the Lockerbie flight and 3 Mile Island. I don't really know exactly what you're talking about, Tim. And when we don't know what someone's talking about, like for the Berlin Wall, for me, I go, seriously? You don't know about the Berlin Wall, or you don't know about Challenger? Or if someone says, yeah, I'm not really sure about JFK. Wasn't he a president? Was JFK a president? Yes, he was a president. It was a huge moment in our history. Time passes. We have to guard, as leaders, we have to guard against judging people because of their lack of information, especially because of their age. But because it is so prominent to us, and this is that psychological trigger, because it affects us so deeply, how could this not affect you? How could you not understand this? How could you not know about the Vietnam War? Like, people entering our workforce now know very little about the Vietnam War. But for people who are boomers, or especially early Gen X, the Vietnam War is a huge part of who you are. It's a huge part of your history. It's a huge part of how you view the world. And so when someone comes in and says, I don't know anything about the Vietnam War, you go, oh my gosh, what a child. Seriously? And now this person I'm supposed to trust with our budget, I'm supposed to trust with decisions, I'm supposed to trust this, I immediately subconsciously judge them. And we have to guard against that. So in guarding against that, let's talk about, now I would encourage you, as we switch gears here, I would encourage you, use these 3 questions in your meetings. Use these things, because what we try to teach and what I encourage leaders to do is use every division as a connection. Instead of using a division, you're younger than me, you have no idea of my worldview, you don't know who JFK is, the Vietnam War, or anything about, do you even know that the 20th century existed? Instead of using that as a divider, use that as a connection point to let people see your worldview, to share with them, well, let me tell you why it's important, because people want to learn. And what's fascinating is when we allow these questions to happen and we put it out there in open space, it's so cool. Like, I even had, we were doing the podcast on this, and I brought up Challenger in one of the episodes. My producer, she is technically a millennial, but she's really more Gen Z. She is about 15 years younger than me. She had no clue about Challenger, like not even one clue of even what it was. So I could use that as a division, and I could immediately go, oh, you're so young. I can't even believe you don't know what Challenger is? Oh my gosh. But instead, I used it as a teaching point. Not that I'm like teaching anything, but I'm saying, oh yeah, it was huge. And I explained to her what it was. And I was like, I don't remember the teacher's name, but there was a teacher on Challenger. I was like, it was a big deal. We're all watching. In the same way, you explain these things and make them connection points, and they connect then from generation to generation. As we have interviewed people and we've talked about this idea from 8-track to emoji, which if you really want to blow people's minds, really want to blow your own mind, ask people if they know what an 8-track is. Judy, I'm just going to say it'll make us feel old. They have no idea what the heck an 8-track is. Record players made a comeback. People know what a record player is, but an 8-track, it's like, wait, what? Yeah. So in leading generations, in cross-generational leadership, and we have an entire, if you're interested in this, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm actually in the process of writing a book for it. So if you ever want more information on this, you can hit me up. I actually have a new email address that I'm very excited about. If you've been with us very long, you remember my email address used to be super, super long, but now it's changed up. And so if you have any questions on this or want more information or would like to work with us in some way, you can email me about this topic or others. But here are 3 things, 3 big takeaways from every generation that we learned. So we asked on our team, we asked them 2 questions. We said, what is good leadership to you? And we asked, what are you looking for the workforce? Because we all know here, we are in a talent drought. All of us know in the hiring and the onboarding, if you can find, hire, and retain good talent, man, that is the name of the game right now. And so in doing so, I'm asking talented people what they're looking for. And here are the 3 common things. The first one, if we want to be a good leader, always be learning. So continual learning was a huge, Janet, that is a great memory. Well done, well played. I remember the first car we ever had was this gigantic Buick. It was like the size of a barge. It was green. I don't know exactly what model it was, but I know it was a Buick. And it was my first one. I remember I got to sit in the hump on the middle, that might be a colloquialism. I don't know if you guys said that, but we say who gets to sit on the hump. So as a kid, we didn't have a lot of car seats. Nowadays, it's probably against the law, but back then it was like I get to sit on the hump and get to sit on the hump, and we had an 8-track player and a CB radio in that Buick. So yeah, it was glorious, the good old days. So the first thing is if you want to be a good leader, and we want to lead cross-generationally, learning is the first key. Now, what does that mean? I think that means like always, that we are always learning, but I think it goes deeper than that. Whether we're talking about reading, podcasts, articles, we're getting better. I think one person, our Gen Xer, said it best. He said, which just for full disclosure, our Gen Xer is 50. He's 50 years old, but he does not seem 50. And I think I've figured out the reason why. It's because he is constantly learning from others. He said, I can learn something from everyone. So he did not take a judgmental view of people older or younger than him. He took an educational view. And so and I just have to give him credit. It doesn't matter if someone is 18 years old or 80 years old and they're working with us, he is honestly approaching them with a learning attitude. And I think because of that, when you stop learning, you start aging. That's when you start aging, when you stop learning. And so the real key here is learning from those young people, learning from those older people, not having an I already know it all, I've either been there and done that, or you're so old and out of it. But really riding that middle ground of understanding, I don't know everything and I can learn from anyone. So that's the number one key. So I would encourage you, my practical takeaway, yes, absolutely, Judy, you're right. Even if it's not what to do, that's exactly right. You can always learn. You can learn from others' mistakes. You can learn from your own mistakes and share those things. But I would encourage you, have a few statements in your conversational toolkit that you go to. Here are a few of mine. Now, you could come up with your own that you like. A few of mine is I always like asking this: what's your story? What's your story is a very open-ended question, which allows people to tell you anything they want to about themselves and then go any direction that you want. What's your story? The second one that I like is tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. So if you want to be a learner and you're like, what do you mean? What's the practical strategy here? When someone says something and maybe you have no clue what they're talking about, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. If they mention an experience and you go, tell me more about that. If they have an idea and you're not sure if you like it or not, you're not sure if you want to use it. Actually, even if you're pretty sure we're not going to use that idea, tell me more about that. Instead of saying that's a bad idea, instead of saying we've done that before, instead of saying, oh, you weren't here, but we tried that 5 years ago, say, tell me more about that. When you say tell me more about that, it puts you in the position of learner rather than judge. Always put yourself in the position of learner, not judge. So then they might actually be saying something differently than you thought, and it helps you overcome that assumption. So what's your story in the one-on-ones? Tell me more about that. And the last one that I love is say, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. And just say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Whether it is jargon or whether it is an idea or whether it is something, and this is older, they might say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Tell me more about that. Using those together. Using that disarming honesty can help you connect with all sorts of generations. Yeah, you can use all sorts of slang. You know what I'm saying? Like, nowadays you can just even say sounds. So whatever it is, I don't even know what the heck they're doing. But you know what? Yep, I'm in. All right, so that's number one. Always be learning, okay? And you can learn something from everyone. Number two, and this is really what we're asking when I said, what are you looking for in the workplace? Every single generation said, listen. They are looking for leaders who will listen. Over every single generation said it, all verbatim. They said they want it. So it shows that all of the things that we look at with the predictive index, Gallup organization, and others, when we talk about employee engagement, it is really true. People want to feel valued. They want to know that they're valued. They want to know that they're heard. And the way to do that is to listen. Now, practical strategies, The tools that I just gave you, those questions, show that you're listening. Tell me more about that. I'm sorry, I don't understand. That's the listening. If you're looking for other practical strategies, we shared this. We shared this early on. I think maybe the first month that we had this. But if I want to show that I'm listening, change the physical environment. And because there are all sorts of, and you can look up way more articles than I could even describe here on active listening. But here are my strategies that I have found to be super effective. Change the physical setting. What do you mean by that, Jerrod? I mean, if I really want to show someone that I'm listening, I'm sitting here and you can see my office. I'm sitting at my desk. That's behind me. You can see here, this is my desk. It's very busy. I'm sorry, I work a lot on stuff. But here's what I mean by change the physical setting. If someone walks into my office, which the door is right over there, if someone walks into the office and I want to show I'm keenly listening, I change the physical setting. What do you mean by change the physical setting? One, as you can see here, I've got some stuff open. I got a notebook there. I've got some markers. I've got this from a retreat. It's a binder. I close the binder. I show people I'm listening by changing the physical setting. I say, hold on a second. I close my binder. I close my laptop. I show them I'm listening. Another way to do it is I stand up and I say, wow, it depends on what the conversation is, but if it's something pretty personal or that they're really sharing, I will move. I will move from where I'm sitting behind the desk to where I'm sitting beside them. Now I'm sitting beside them chair to chair, okay? I'm changing the physical setting. So these are quick tips. These are like hacks to show people you're listening. Changing the physical setting. It has nothing to do with your listening, but it has everything to do with your attention, and it has everything to do with saying without saying, I am listening to you, okay? The other thing is don't shut down ideas immediately. Don't shut down ideas immediately. Those are my two tips. If you want to be a better listener as a leader, always change the physical setting in some way. It can be small. Closing the book, closing your laptop. I'm listening. I'm here. If you just basically, if you change the physical setting, if you just commentate what you're doing out loud, it shows people you're listening. So for example, it's like, hey, I'm sorry, I really want to focus. I'm going to close my laptop just so I can listen. Hey, actually, I was in the middle of texting someone. Let me finish texting so I can really focus on you. I'm just commentating what I'm doing, and it lets people know you really want to listen to me. Number two is it's all about ideation and hearing people's ideas without crushing them immediately. This is where tell me more is huge. Instead of saying, yeah, we tried that, you're shutting down an idea and people feel like you're not listening to them. You could be totally right. You could be actually 100% right. That doesn't matter. People want to feel heard. So if you go, tell me more about that. Okay, what do you think about this? And so instead of saying that's not going to work, ask them piercing questions. Not, I don't think that's going to work, but say things like, that's a good idea. Have you thought about this? And you're giving some feedback. You're giving like the other side of it, but you're showing them that you're listening, not just saying it's not going to work. So the tell me more really shows that you're listening. Finally, so this is the number three. Remember, it's always be learning. You can learn something from everybody. Listen, and those tactics for listening. Number three, give people the opportunity to succeed. Cross-generational leadership is about giving people the opportunity to succeed. There are two easy traps. If someone is younger than me, I may not delegate. I may not give authority. I may not give responsibility because I do not trust that they will accomplish it. Give people the chance to succeed. This is where early on, remember I said I'm judging you because I don't understand your jargon. I don't understand your lingo. I don't understand your attire. I'm frustrated by some of those things. I cannot be completely candid. I'm frustrated by some of those things. Like professional decorum, I have to teach a lot of professional decorum. I have to teach like, okay, let's not reply to professional emails with jargon, with slang. Let's not call a client queen because, you got it, queen. We're not going to use that jargon. Janet, trust me, it's a real thing, okay? Like, hey, can you do this for me? You got it, king. Okay, thank you. You can just call me Jerrod. And don't say that to clients. But my point is, I can't use those things to judge them holistically and say, I'm not going to trust you with something, so give them a chance to succeed. Now, if you've given them a chance to succeed and they fail in a specific area and you teach through that and you work through that, fine. But all too often we judge a book by its cover, and all too often we assume inadequacies in one area because of our preferences in another area. There's a difference in preference and priority, and understanding I prefer some of these things to be different about you, but the priority is your work ethic, and you've got a strong work ethic. The priority is that you're here on time, and you're here on time. The priority is that you're willing to do the tasks, and you're willing to do the tasks. So if we want to give people a chance to succeed, if we're looking at people younger than us, it often comes in the form of delegation and authority. If we're looking at people older than us and more established, it often comes in cynicism, to where we're cynical about their reasons, we're cynical about their worldview, we're cynical about their cynicism. And so and we can often think that our way is better simply because we're new or we're younger. I mean, if I'm looking at people even, because I'm smack in the middle, I'm 39. I work with people older than me, I work with people younger than me. And if I'm looking at older, more established generations, I can often think my way is better. I can be arrogant. I can think that you're so antiquated, that's not going to work. We need to change things. Give people the chance to succeed. Give people the legitimate opportunity to fail or succeed on their own merit without judging them first. This can often happen then if we are working for someone who is older than us. It's mostly about our attitude that we, when people think, my boss, she is so out of touch, or she's so frustrating. Give them a chance to succeed. So those are the three things that we heard over and over and over in different ways from every generation. We heard that people want to be heard, the listening aspect. We heard that learning is key. Learning is key. Learning from every generation, learning from everyone in your workspace. Learning is key. And finally, we heard that people want a chance to succeed. If you want to be a good leader cross-generationally, you have to give people of all generations an opportunity to do good work without assumption or judgment. Now that's 8-track 2 emoji. That is all that we have for today. If you have any specific questions, I would love to stay on for a few minutes and answer those. It's 11:36 and we want to honor your time. I just want to say it's been such a joy to work with you all over these last several months. It's been great, and I'm looking forward to all the announcements that we have about national conference and things coming up. I don't think that we have any other housekeeping for today. So I just want to say thank you to Nahara, thank you, Judy, thank you everyone who's joined us, those familiar faces who have been around. You guys are just the best. What a great group to work with. I'm seeing some positive comments here. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Tim said King. Wow, nice job, Tim. Way to go, kid. Way to go, you Gen Zer. That's hilarious. Tim, you're square Gen X. You can't get away from it. Okay, all your answers like screamed Gen Xer. So, all right, Sherry, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Madam President, Judy, do we have any other announcements that we need to make before we officially close?
As you can tell, I'm from the Gen X. I just turned my camera off. Okay, so no, I just really want to thank you, Jerrod, for all of these leadership essentials, talks. You really had a great session today. I even learned some items to use and some techniques to use, and just thank you so much. And again, we'll have an announcement regarding our conference probably later on today, and we're excited, and we hope everyone else will be too. So
thank you so much. And I'm typing here, really, once again, it is kind of a shameless plug, but truly, if you like this session, check out our podcast, because there are four episodes in a row that go into much more detail about everything we just said. So if you're like, that was really cool, I want to hear more. And it's really cool to hear from your generation. You might go, I want to hear the Gen Xer. Let's see if I agree with what he said, and how you would differentiate. They're really, really fun podcasts. So Scott, I'm not sure about the recording. Judy will have that. And so Judy, that might be an answer. He said, will the recording be available soon? So I'm not really sure what we do on that.
I have to defer to Janet on that one. She's our techie.
Janet already answered. She's fast. Janet already put it in the chat.
Yeah, it'll be on our website, and also will be shared on social media by the end of the week.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you had some techniques. I've used these in real life meetings, those questions early on, the technology, the pop culture, and worldwide event. And they are such good icebreakers. They work real, they're tried and true. So feel free to use those. They're really, really good conversation starters and really good to help people turn division into connection. So I hope that there's some good techniques for you.
Jerrod, I have a question in regards to your podcast. How do we go get into your podcast?
Oh,
Is there-
absolutely. Yeah, wherever you get your podcast, it should be there. So if you are Spotify, it's on Spotify. If you use Apple, it's on Apple. It looks like this. So I just have I have an iPhone, and so on the podcast app, you can just search for it in that store. Same thing on Spotify. Those are the main two. I think we're on Stitcher also, if you use Stitcher. But it looks like this. That's the logo.
The Good Leader podcast. Okay.
The Good Leader podcast, and then it's just got Paradigm Shift up in the corner. But yeah, if you just look for Good Leader podcast, it's usually the top one that's going to pop up. And yeah, the last 4 episodes, like this one was called Gen Z Unfiltered, Baby Boomers in the Workplace, Millennials in the Workplace. So yeah, it's, whoops, that's
Awesome.
a really terrible glare. There you go. But yeah, that's what it looks like. And
Okay.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great question. Any other questions about technical stuff or material or moving forward? I'll be happy to hang out. Oh, good. Sherry found it. Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, give it a listen. It's pretty fun. It's got a lot of personality to it. We don't take ourselves too seriously. I give Anj a hard time, our producer, and she gives me a hard time. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you,
for all of
Jerrod.
your research, Jerrod. Sorry, Janet. Thank you for joining us for the last few months. I think it's been a pleasure for all of us to learn all these wonderful tips and tricks. And Janet will be uploading some of these episodes into our YouTube channel and sharing them on social media. So thank you once again, Jerrod. Sorry, Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, totally enjoy all the sessions, Jerrod. Every time you come on, your attitude and your knowledge is amazing. And just wanted to say thank you so much. And Judy and Tel, do you have any words that you'd like to say to our group?
I'll defer to Tal. You know, I've already spoken a bit.
Yeah.
And I'll just echo all the good stuff Judy's already said. So how's that? No, it's a great session, Jerrod. Always look forward to it. And as Judy has hinted or alluded to, information forthcoming. And I know many on this this call today, this virtual meeting, are very curious as to how we move forward for the 25th annual conference. Stay tuned.
Thank you, everyone, so much for attending. Everyone have a great day and be safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for driving, Janet. Bye.
No.
Thanks, Jerrod.